Hey everyone, thank you for joining us this week on the Veterinary Ledger podcast. Very excited today to be talking to Michael Skarie. He is the owner of Hess Ridge Animal Hospital in Frederick, Colorado. They opened up April of last year, and I think that they have been doing amazing things. Michael seems to be very humble about it, but we're going to try to get him to share all of his insider secrets. So Michael, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Been open just over a year, but I think I've learned a lot along the way. So hopefully I have a few nuggets to share.
I think so. I definitely think so. So let's talk a little bit about, you worked as a veterinarian on your own. I mean, you worked for someone else. What inspired you? It's a heavy lift to open up your own practice. What was the driver behind that?
Yeah, so in vet school, I always thought I did want to open my own practice. I had a business during undergrad that kind of helped pay for a lot of college. I was actually worked as a carnival operator that had a ride. I went around Wisconsin.
Wow.
Yeah, so I had a little bit of business experience, minimal, but a little bit. And
That's business experience as a carny?
I owned my own rides. I went around the Wisconsin to different circuits and helped pay for a lot of vet school. So
Shut the front door. Did you sell that business now or take it a whole different
yes,
turn?
I sold it the day before vet school. So I had like very minimal experience, but I sold it to a friend. So it wasn't like anything big at all, but had a little bit of business experience. And then once I got out of vet school, I thought the medicine was such a challenge that kind of dream went out the window. And I was like, nope, it's enough of a challenge just to try to be a good vet. And so I spent the next couple of years with no idea of ownership in mind. And then one day, my previous practice, which sold to a corporation, and that's kind of when I looked at, things and said, I have a few options. If I go to another private practice, honestly, if I put my heart and soul into it and build it up, it's probably going to sell as well. And for it to be right back in the same position. If I go the corporate route, I don't like not being in control of my future. And I think you're dictated by whatever corporations decide. And so wanted to kind of take hold of my own future a little bit and said, now's as good a time as ever. I don't think I was more confident in that where I can now kind of tackle the next challenge. And so the day after I found out we sold, I walked into a broker and said, like, how do I get a business? And so went into Car Realty and said, let's start looking for a building.
You are a man who makes decisions. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So a little bit on the fly, had the support from my wife, and that was the biggest thing. But, I kind of just looked around and said, it's time. If there was ever a time, it's now. So.
Well, you made that switch. So that switch went off where you said, this is the direction I'm headed. Who else did you surround yourself with? So you mentioned Car Realty. I guess what role did they play in the process? Was there anyone else instrumental to like building your team to help you locate property and get doors opened?
Yeah, so Car was amazing. I worked with someone named Brad Sheesby who was fantastic and was straight to the point, and I appreciated that. And then the other big one I owe to is Provide. So worked with Robert, I believe his last name was Gibson, but you could tell from the beginning, like he was just an excellent individual to work with. And I have nothing but good things to say about Provide. They held my hand along the way. They let me ask the questions that maybe were difficult, went out of their way to communicate with me, kind of brought me down to a few events and let me market with the other people. So Provide also was excellent. And then my Patterson rep, Bill Marks, he was fantastic at helping me get along as well and took me to some of their events. I think it's called a GPS event, which kind of gets new practice owners into it. And he was excellent. So, once I kind of got in touch with those three, and I learned it was kind of a big networking game, a game to meet others, then I think the pieces fell in place. And the one advice I got from everyone was surround yourself with a good team. And I would tell that to everyone, like making sure you get the right people in place is the best thing you can do. And you guys as well. I work with vet books as well. They're fantastic. I have nothing but good things to say about them. But I think once you surround yourself with a team that can do the things that you don't know how to do, that allows you to focus on the things you are good at and can bring in income and clients and staff. And it allows me to work on it day to day here.
Okay. So surrounding yourself with a good team. Year one, you've already added another veterinarian.
Yep. We added our second vet. 4 months after we started, we just put out the ad last week for DVM3. So if anyone is in Parker, Colorado, please come join us.
Or wants to be, right? I want to be in Burger.
Or want to be in Parker, Colorado. We're just south of Denver. A lot of good things here. But yeah, DVM2 was, I will say, I got lucky in that my college roommate, my vet school roommate, my best friend, he worked at the previous practice with me. And so I went into this knowing I had a backup or a second vet that was going to be on their way. So we kind of started it. There was some non-competes with our previous practice and non-solicits with our previous practice that we had to abide to, but we made the agreement that the day that ended, he would come over. So non-compete ended June 30th. He joined July 1st. Truthfully, it was probably like a month or two early. We probably weren't ready for it yet, but within a month, we were able to fill that. And the benefit of having someone else here to help support me and grow me, and someone I can rely on with all the trust in the world, um, it was a no-brainer to bring him on, even if it was a month early.
A month early, maybe, but again, you're starting from zero revenue. So
Yeah.
was there anything specifically you felt you did to build the brand, to advertise really well early, to get the name recognition out there so that you could accomplish what you're accomplishing so quickly?
I'm a big believer in client service should always come first. I kind of look at the landscape around us, and more practices are being bought up by corporate. It's hard to compete with a lot of things they have as far as scalability. But the one thing I do feel like we can compete with is customer service. We can go above and beyond in ways because, there's myself in here and others that can, I don't want to say care more, but are more invested in making sure that client success is a priority. And so I truly think all my success is every single thing I do here, every single thing I purchase, every single thing we implement is with the idea of what's the client's perspective behind it and what is that customer service? Is it in the benefit of the customer and the patient? I truly believe a happy client is a happy staff because they just make the day-to-day easier for staffs. A happy client is good marketing because, one client, it's amazing how often they'll go tell 12 neighbors or suddenly they have 16 uncles and aunts around town that also have dogs. And one client that you give a good experience to turns into 50 dogs that you see or cats. And so I think everything I do here is with the idea of what can we do for the client? And then from there, I truly believe that's allowed us to grow so quickly because people recognize it when you want to put them first.
That's clearly tone at the top, but you can have that vision. You can say that all day long, but how are you preaching? How are you training that into the team? Is it part of your hiring process, making sure you identify that quality within the individual that you're hiring? How frequently are you building that into your team's mindset?
Yeah, I think there's two steps to that. So number one is just in the hiring practice of it. And, my rule is you got to be a good person first. That experience, everything else doesn't matter. You have to be a good person. And I rely on my staff a lot to snip that out because I know a lot of people can sound really good during interviews. So my process is always we start by interviewing them and then I have them come spend a day or a few hours with my staff. And, it's hard to fool a whole team. It's easy to fool one individual. And so I get the perspective of everyone to make sure, do we think this person fits? And then it's having that culture. I think everyone knows here that priority one is client service. Not just reminding everyone all the time. I reward members when they go above and beyond, getting a Google review with their name in it, a lot of things, because I want them to realize that everyone here to have that client service. I think once you kind of build that culture, it's pretty easy when, in the back of everyone's head, your mission statement is to make the client experience top of mind all the time.
I think that's so cool what you said, because you're right. It's so easy to preach and just say, client service, but
Yeah.
calling attention to those team members, rewarding them through recognition or compensation or benefits, whatever it is, I think that's the secret sauce. That's the sickiness which really makes that employee buy in more.
Yeah. And it's, kudos can only go so far. I think sometimes you have to, verbally, physically, like at some point or like compensation wise, you have to reward them in some way to make it. So there's a reason why it's always at the top of mind, even on bad days.
That's important. And it's especially these days when it's so hard to find staff, right? It's really hard to find good staff. So keeping them is important.
To have that buy-in though, I think it's worthwhile because it's more enjoyable to be here when you can tell clients want to see people or they ask for you individually. There's that purpose of why staff members are here is because they recognize they're making a change in families' lives as opposed to just clocking in, clocking out. And so I think you have to find the right individual to get that buy-in. But once you do, it seems like it self-perpetuates itself and becomes very successful and gives them a reason to work hard and, go through those tough days or those chaotic days and come out of it still with a smile on their face.
Have you seen that correlate to or translate to retention as well?
I have. I mean, obviously, I think in the opposite, I think some people realize that this is just not for me. So I would say in the opposite, but I listened to you guys' podcast the other day, and then I think it was Michael, actually, I think that was his name, said the energy bus. And I went and read the energy bus forever. He mentioned that. I mean, I realized that you got to have the right people on your team that want buy-in. And so, I don't blame anyone that decided that this isn't the right fit for them because I want them to be in a better situation. If that's okay, it gets better retention for the people that want to buy in and see your vision, see your mission.
I just think now knowing your background in Cardinals, I would have to say you have to have pulled some of that, like that client service, that client experience, and those undertones have to be coming into your practice daily.
Right up, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So we had the inflatable giant balls that would walk on water, and I was the only one in Wisconsin at the time that had it. And we would only allow smaller children into it just because there's a weight limit. And so if there was a lot of comfort as far as assuring clients or assuring parents at that time that it's okay to, put their child into a giant
Oh,
inflatable ball. And so yeah, I will say I've learned quite a bit of how to be empathetic, sympathetic, and comfort clients from that.
Right. Speaking of surprises, right? I feel like this is a good. Any big surprises your first year? Anything you weren't expecting that you were like, oh, what am I going to do with that? Or good surprises, bad surprises.
Yeah. So I think what I didn't realize, and this is, I guess, one of the negatives, is just how much is outside of the vet world. For example, we're leasing a building, there's been leaks since day one, and, it drains on you. So I think the surprise was how much outside of this, the just basic day to day, what you think is veterinary care there is. But at the same time, you learn as you go and you figure out how to deal with that. I think the other surprise was just how much people interaction was involved with this. It's, you're so used as an associate DVM to just dealing with clients, but dealing with pets. And then suddenly you're owner and you almost have a family here where you're dealing with day-to-day stuff that's happening in employees' lives and trying to balance running a business, but also being incredibly empathetic about there's more important things than what happens inside these walls. And so I think the big learning experience for me was just how much extra time and emotional energy that would take. But at the same time, it comes with territory and there's a few learning curves as far as to deal with it. But I think and hope I'm getting better at it. But that I would say was the biggest surprise was the extracurricular outside of veterinary medicine type things that ownership comes with.
HR takes up a lot of time.
Yes, it does. Yeah. And there's absolutely no training in it other than real world and hard knocks experiences.
There's a lot of gut instincts, right? Oh, I shouldn't have said that. Oh, I can't talk about that. Yeah.
A lot of second guessing.
That's funny.
Any
That's true.
redos, anything you would want to, I wish I had that opportunity back, or I wish I had done, X, Y, Z a little bit differently, or you feel like, hey, what I did happened for a reason. Don't need a redo on it. And I'm just going to, course correct and change going forward.
Yeah, not really. Small things like I wish I would have put my scale in a different location, like things like that, if there's ever a building two, I will learn from that. And those are very small things, but overall big picture things, not really, because everything I would say that I think I learned from and I think I came out better from because it's a learning experience. And, having no business experience outside of the carnival, which was very different than this. And I think I've learned a lot. And the only way for me to ever learn it was to make a few small mistakes and changes. And so I don't think I would change those at the end of the day because if I didn't learn them already, I would have learned them in the future. And it's better to learn it when you're smaller than you're bigger, I think.
Very fair.
I think you're also very thoughtful and mindful. Like, I don't see you as like a knee-jerk reaction kind of guy. Like, I think that there's probably like a thought process behind most of what you're doing.
I think my wife would disagree when I came home one day and said, I'm opening a business. But other than that, yeah, I think I tend to try to think through things or at least self-reflect afterwards and be critical of myself.
Well, and as you've grown, like you've bought equipment smartly, right? Like you're making smart decisions. I'm going to use this. This is how I'm going to use it. I think implementing things like that is a lot better than being like, oh, I want this new toy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say, like, that's one thing is at the beginning, I learned that everyone is going to sell you something. You don't need everything though. And so you can be you have to be very lean and mean at the beginning and be very selective of what can I actually live with and what don't I need. I use my ultrasound every day, almost every patient. I didn't have it for the first 3 months I was open, which I thought I would never survive with, but we found a way to. And then when we were able to afford it, I was able to purchase one. And so every equipment purchase, I think, and the big purchase, if you talk to a lot of people at the beginning, they're like, you need everything and you need the highest form of everything. I think there's ways around that and being selective and smart about when you need it and when it actually can have a return on investment is smart.
What's been the greatest thing? What's been like made your heart swell and you're just so happy and you want to do it 10 times over?
As much as the HR stuff is also a daily suck, it's also, I think, the most rewarding thing in the world. Like I truly feel like I have a family here that, like, of friends, coworkers, and family that, I don't want to say rely on me because they don't, but at the same time, like, we all are building this together. And so just the idea of we are all in this, we've built something from literally ground zero and scratch. This building was a dirt pad, 2 years ago. To me, it just makes my heart swell that it wasn't just me, it was everyone in here that's involved and that people can become so invested in something that was your dream, but they've taken ownership and made it their dream as well and have the mindset as you. So honestly, when I think back on Hess Ridge, it's more about the people in it than actually like any business aspect of it.
Is that true for the new hires? I mean, so you have your OG crew that built it with you, but now you're growing, right? So
Yeah.
there's some new people in the mix. Are they drinking the Kool-Aid too?
I think so. I hope so. Yeah. I think it takes a few months to find out like who's really invested and who's not, because everyone can go to a new job and be totally invested for a while. It's who can stick through it and who can like really be involved in what you're trying to build. So far, I love my new hires. So I think they're going to be a part of the team. I think they're going to be on the bus. It's just, it takes a little bit of time. So we have 3 more starting in the next month or two. And, we vetted them deeply. I think they're all going to be amazing hires. But, time will tell.
I think that can't go unnoticed the way you're talking. Again, to Megan's point, it's so intentional. I've never yet heard I, or it's always been we, it's ours, it's the Hess Ridge team. There's nothing about you that just is soul driven, and you own this thing. This is your
Yeah.
legal business, this is yours, but it's always a collaborative team approach. So I think just to highlight that, and that just speaks to everything, your care of team and staff and all of it. And clearly that's resonating and getting the buy-in, getting the people to join the bus because you're taking that approach.
Yeah, I would say it's very intentional because when I think starting Hess Ridge was easier than it is scaling right now. Once you had enough bodies in there, it's harder because you can't have your fingerprints on everything, even though you want to. And I think, at the beginning, I could have my fingerprints because we had just me and 4 employees. There are 5 employees. And so I'm recognizing that it can't always be a me or an I thing. It's the team and the systems and everything that's in here has to operate, or I'll never be able to leave, and get home to my family. And so it's very intentional that I want Hess Ridge to be a family driven type environment that everyone has ownership with, so that if someone's sick for a day or wants to take a vacation, we can survive that, and not just survive, but thrive while they're gone, and allow that opportunity for people to have that work-life balance. And so everything I do here tries to be with the intentional thought that we have to do it as a team, because I don't want any one individual to be, the linchpin that if they leave, we fall apart.
Was there a number of employees where you started to realize that, where it's, once I hit greater than 5, like it can't just only be my voice, and at 10, we need to start to build out a management level or a leadership level? Was there a specific level where you started to say, yeah, I can't just be me and my voice?
It was the second Dr. French joined our second DVM. I just wouldn't say the second. It was about 2 months after that, because it took about 2 months of me learning that before I learned that lesson. But when it was just me. I had my fingerprint on every single patient that walked through the store. Like, you could tell me, this dog with this owner had this issue, and I knew from the start what was happening. I quickly realized if I'm not seeing that patient, there might be an issue developing that I'm just not aware of. And so that's 2 months after we started, I realized, I can't have my fingerprint on everything. And if I hope to scale to the point I hope we're at, I think we can have 4 or 5 doctors here. I'm not going to be able to be involved with everything unless I drive myself rated and burn myself out, which isn't going to be a benefit for anyone here if I'm burnt out. And so at that point, I realized, okay, we actually had the systems, you have to have the operations in place that no matter what vet's seeing the patient or what staff members on, we know how to handle it, because it's the same way, same time, every time, no matter who's involved or what day it is, who's on, who's not. And so that was one of my tough learning lessons, is realizing that we have systems and it couldn't just be my way. It had to be the Hess Ridge way. But that didn't develop till about 2 months after I learned that lesson.
So congratulations on your brand new baby.
Yes.
Thank you.
But have your priorities shifted? You're a practice owner, so that was your first baby, right?
Yeah.
It's a whole new world. You got a lot going on, dude.
Yeah.
So has that changed?
Yeah, we welcomed our son into the world, first son, New Year's Eve. So, yes, things have changed a lot. Definitely have also, kind of going back to that last point, maybe realize I can't be here all the time. Like, my priorities have shifted a little bit too. I need to be at home, and I want to be at home, or at least want the opportunity to be at home when I need to be. And so, yes, it shifted. I think it changed my why, though. So my why when I started was not to be corporate and to give myself a purpose. My new why is, to allow myself the opportunity to be at home, which I know is going to take effort and building those systems and allow myself to be at home so things can operate smoothly and I don't have to come back and put out a bunch of fires. But it's really just changed my why as to what I'm doing here.
Yay.
How much time and attention are you giving to that? Because you still got to grow, you still go to be client facing, but there clearly has to be a systems development, a process development. How do you juggle both of those, and how you're allocating your days? Management level, staying above board, while also kind of being that technician, being below board a little bit too.
Yeah, you just pointed out my number one dilemma right now that I'm running into is finding time to work on the business and also in the business. Like in the business being as a DVM as stays here, but on the business of building those operations because that takes a ton of time too. And so brought in a practice manager recently that I'm hoping will help me out with that. And I'm learning, I'm not very good at it, but I'm learning to delegate and give tasks away and trust and spread those practices. But then it's also just intentionally carving out time to make sure that I do have time to build on the business, not just in the business. And a lot of that comes with Dr. Fred being amazing and being willing to take on that extra load, understand what I'm doing. I'm not in the background avoiding patients. I'm just trying to, build for the next step and kind of see down the road 6 months and make sure we're set up for that. So we're not constantly reacting. We're being a little bit proactive about our growth. And then DVM3, hopefully we find one here in the next couple months. That I'm hoping will allow me a little bit of time too. I'm intentionally probably putting out an ad a month or two before I probably need to, with the idea that if we find someone that fits our culture, fits our work style, perfect. That will allow me a little bit of time in the background to have more time to work on the business and make sure that DVM is set up for success. And if we don't, then, it allows me more time and a little bit of headway to make sure we find the right fit.
I think that's also critical because you're what you just said there is maybe you're not ready. So to me, putting that to numbers is maybe you bring on that third doctor and margins get compressed a bit because we're not as busy, but you're willing to sacrifice, it sounds like, a little bit of profitability here in the short term for hopefully, bigger margins down the road, more growth, more opportunity. Is that kind of how you view it as well? Is sacrifice a little bit short term for that exponential growth in the long term?
100%. And it's a gamble, obviously, not knowing what the future's going to hold. I have an idea what the market is around here. I have a giant neighborhood across the street about to go in. And so, I'm gambling a little bit on the success of that and that things work. But yeah, I also know my vision here was, and what I built this place for was to be a 3, 4, 5 doctor practice. And so we have the equipment, the rooms, the space for it. That means I need to get to that point to make it financially work. And so, yeah, I'm more than willing to somewhat sacrifice a little bit of profitability in the short term with the idea that long-term gain is in mind. And I think that's going to be a much better way to set us up for success than, wait to the last minute, immediately hire the first DVM that applies that may not fit our culture and potentially set us back much farther than that short blip in profitability might cost me.
Have you found yourself doing that not just at the DVM level, but also at the technician level and this, CSR level where overspending maybe to an extent or overhiring to an extent, not going crazy the opposite side of it, but like ensuring that you're always ready for that next hire?
I'm trying to. And I did that back in the fall, and then we slowed down just a little bit over the holidays, which I think is a trend, but I just didn't have any data to go back a year to know, what that trend was. And so I kind of got away from that a little bit, which I regret now. And now we're trying to get ahead of it again and say, yeah, yes, let's have enough staff. So not only can I work on the business and work on setting up those systems, I also have the time for my staff to do that as well. Because I think the best way to do that is empower the staff, because then it's a staff driven, thing where they can give their advice, set the protocols, figure out how things are done. And that way there's more buy-in when it does get implemented. And so that's where a lot of the 3 hires are coming in here, is to try to get back ahead of the curve a little bit so that we can allocate some time, resources, not have the burnout, and put it back into building the systems.
Huge advice there.
It is. Okay, you're out, you're successful, you've added a doctor, you're growing, you're doing all the things. Looking back, what's the one thing you'd tell someone looking to start a business or running a business now that seems to be struggling? Is there a nugget?
Starting a business, I would start by saying, I'd go for it. Like 100%, I have zero regrets with it. Make sure everyone around you is on board as well, though, as far as family and friends, because that is the one nugget I wasn't aware of, is how much sacrifice would come from everyone else. I mean, my wife is amazing, has been incredibly supportive through the whole thing, but what I didn't, I knew she would take a little bit of have to sacrifice a little bit for us to start this. I didn't realize what my close friends would have to do as well. Because when I used to be available to, watch the game on a Thursday night and have a beer, I'm not available anymore because I am working in this place. And so I feel very thankful that my friends stay close with me, but I didn't realize the sacrifice that they would have to take as well. So I guess step one would be just become aware of how much sacrifice, not just your immediate family, but everyone around you will have to take. Hopefully in the long run to buy more time for yourself. But in the immediate term, there is a sacrifice to that. But my second piece of advice would be go for it. In a lot of ways, it was much more difficult than I thought, but in a lot of ways, it was a lot easier than I thought to start this place. Because if you can take it just one step at a time and just tackle each issue like an individual issue, and suddenly you look up and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm a year in, they're in Dr. Free, and I don't know how it happened. And so I think getting that team in place and not trying to do it all yourself, again, kind of going back to the spend a little bit of money to make a little bit of money type or lose a bit of profitability.
Sure.
I don't know where I'd be without you guys. Heather, I literally don't. I think I'd be not here anymore. I don't know where I'd be without vet books. I don't know where I would be without all the people that got me here. And yes, does it cost a little bit of money? Absolutely. Has it probably made me, fivefold in the future? Yes, because it allowed me time not to stress or burn out on the things I don't know how to do. It allowed me time to be here. And so I think my advice would be go for it because it's worth it and you get to control your future. Make sure you have the right team around you and make sure you sniff out who's just trying to sell you something that you don't need versus who's actually there to support you.
I love that. Thanks for all the shout outs too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We all
you guys
love
have
Heather.
saved me. Yeah. You guys have saved me. Yeah. When she talks, my jaw drops. Like, I don't know what you're saying because it's that impressive, but I appreciate that you're on my team. And so,
Aw,
yeah.
I love that for her and you.
Yeah. Yeah. Taxes, not my thing. So I appreciate in accounting. I appreciate you guys helping with it.
Perfect. Okay, so if somebody wants to find you, if somebody wants a job, that third, fourth, fifth doctor, where can they
Yes.
find you?
Yeah. HessRidgeAnimalHospital.com. All my information's on there. My email is michael.skarie@hessridgeanimalhospital.com. Please email me. We're definitely looking for good vets that fit our vision, a lot of autonomy, good staffing. I think you'll really like it here. And then, if they're able to reach out to you guys, feel free to give them my number too. I'm more than happy to talk to anyone that either wants to start because I will say when I started this, I was searching high and low, LinkedIn, Fin, Facebook. There's not a lot of resources out there. There's established practice owners. There's not a lot of new ones that just went through it that I found that were going to talk. I do all of wildflower vetting in Brighton, Colorado. Dr. McGuire there, also amazing. Also looking for a vet. She's another one that you should hire. She kind of took me under her wing a little bit and helped me out, and I owe it to her 'cause I would be lost without her. So, but yeah, HessRidgeAnimalHospital.com.
I appreciate your time today.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank
very
you
much,
guys.
Michael. Always good to see you.